I've just made a big mistake. Seems to have an actual fire. We pick up right where we left off at the end of the last video, jacking up the E90 ready to finally fit these Eibach lowering springs, which I've been carrying around in the back of my car for the last 6 months. Why has it taken me 6 months to get to fitting these springs finally? Well, if you look at my last few videos, we had the house move last time round, which took up a lot of attention and energy, and before that we had issues with the mocker as well as the wrapping of this car, which took a lot longer than expected. In a second I'll get that wheel off and we'll get into it, but before we do, in the last video we had the garage to organise, and not a huge amount has happened since that video. I have got a few bits on the wall over there, a few more bits on the wall over there, but these are garden tools where we had a shed previously, and unfortunately that is no longer the case. So I'm going to have to store these in the garage, but I put them on the wall so they are off the floor and hopefully out of the way. I'm sure as I walk past I'll probably bash into them, but anyway, moving on from that, I put my car wash bucket up there, as that's quite a chunky thing to have got off the floor, so that's good news. But that does leave us still with things around, and the problem with boxes and living out of boxes is once you open it, as you can see I have done, and you start getting things out, it very quickly becomes a big mess. And we have a few more bits around there, but not too bad to be honest. And in my quest to get stuff sorted in here the other day, Milo and I took a trip to Machine Mart. Let's cut to that now. Do you know, Milo, it's been 20 years since I started being a mechanic, and when I did, I came to this very shop to buy my first ever toolbox. Do you want to see which one I got? Have a look in the next window. It's like the black one with the gold, May. Yeah, was that a good choice?
How much money?
It's 335 for the bottom section and 192 for the top. But that's not what we're here for. We're looking at this sort of thing. What do you think?
Good.
Good? Okay, well let's go home and do some measuring. And back to present day then. I did like that workbench which Machine Mart had, but reading the reviews, some felt that it was a little bit flimsy on one side. What I really liked about it is that it was long enough to fill this length from the toolbox to the door, and the little cubby would fit the compressor underneath, so I don't lose workbench space because of the compressor. However, I'm going to be in this house and in this garage for a long time, so I don't want to get the wrong thing. I think the thing that really put me off that Machine Mart workbench was the wooden top. For the type of jobs that I'm going to be doing, it would probably be fine, but it's only going to take one heavy duty job. I don't have plans to take an engine out of a car anytime soon. I've done it in the past, but it's not something I'd particularly want to do. But if I did, putting that on a wooden bench is going to put all sorts of dents in it. I've gone and ordered myself this workbench from UK Workbenches, which has a metal top, and that will be much more durable and see me through many years of garaging and YouTubing, and is quite similar to what I used to work on back at the Vauxhall dealer in my professional mechanicking days. But that's going to be probably a few weeks till it gets here. Hopefully it arrived in this video, it'd be nice to show you, but we can't be waiting for that, so let's get this wheel off and get the suspension strut tower out so we can swap over those springs. Here we go. I cannot believe I'm finally getting down to doing these lowering springs. This bolt here is the one I'm most nervous about. When we fitted the wheel speed sensor not so long ago, I squirted some lubricant on it to give it the best chance of undoing, because these are renowned for seizing. So let's do it first and hope for the best. Yes! Look at that. A bit of luck maybe. Great, so now we can crack on. We've got to undo this control arm and undo the drop link there, that control arm and the tie rod, because this hub fits around the strut here like a sleeve, and the strut goes all the way down here get the hub off, then you have to get a chisel in that gap there, which splits the hub outwards like that, and then I can buff it down so it comes off the end of the bottom of the strut there. We've also got a bracket there which supports the brake pipes. I have seen a video where someone took the brake caliper off, but I can't see that that's necessary, so I'm going to try to not do that. And we've also got the wire for the wheel speed sensor, which has now come loose having undone that bolt. That's fine, just need to remember to put that back in. Okay, I think next I will do this control arm down here. And to get to that control arm bolt, I need to take the under tray off, which is a good thing because you can see down there that I've got a bit of an oil leak going on. Yes, another oil leak on the E90. So up there down the back of the engine you can see various oil drips, so clearly the oil leak is at the back of the engine rather than the front. To properly investigate that, I need to get the scuttle panel off yet again, but that's not what we're here to do today. I'm not putting off laying the car any longer, so we plough on with that. And for this one, it is an 18mm nut, which you only need to undo from this side because the nut on the other side is secured. And that is now nice and loose. There we go. And then onto this one, which does have a nut on the end of the bolt, which is going to need to be secured. That is also an 18mm. Just struggling to get the bolt out because it's hitting the dust cover for the steering rack tie rod end. But the tie rod end is something that we need to undo. I'm thinking once I've undone it, maybe I can move the tie rod end out of the way enough to get that bolt out, so I'm just going to leave it in there for now. Just turn the wheel towards me a bit so I've got better access to the tie rod, which I'm going to get out next. That is a 22mm, might be able to get the gun on that. Bit of an awkward angle. Let's say 22, it's 21. That's how you get a track rod end out. Let's see if we can get the bolt out from back there now the track rod end is loose. There we go. What I don't get though is that this rear control arm with the bolt out isn't really loose. Just wondering if the strut up here needs loosening off. These 3 bolts there, one of which is hiding underneath that strut brace, so that I can pull the strut towards me and hopefully then the control arm just pulls out with it. Before we get there, let's try and undo the drop link. So at the top of the drop link we have a 16mm there, and really helpfully these have got a nut on the back, a bit like boxes, but there's more nut here to get your spanner on. Well played BMW. We've got a 17mm nut on the back of that track rod end actually. Easy. That disconnects the brake hose from the strut. The wheel speed sensor wire is already disconnected from earlier. So now with the brake hose, the reason I can see that you would want to take the caliper off is to avoid stretching this as you move the hub down off the strut, and that's got quite a long way to travel, like that much, before it will come off the bottom. And does the brake hose have that much slack in it before that becomes tight? I'm not too sure it does, to be honest. I think it might just be sensible to remove the caliper, and all that requires is to remove these dust covers, and then I suspect you've got a 7mm Allen key inside. I feel like I've done brake pads at the front on the channel before. I can't remember which car, but I will put a link in the top right to whatever video it was. I just need to undo this spring. So that's the caliper hung up, out of the way, hung on that wire. Bit sketchy, but I think it'll be fine. There's nowhere else to hang it up, so I'll have to do. Now onto the top of the strut, and I will do these 3 nuts, just undo them loosely because I still need to get that control arm free from the bottom. These guys are 13mm, and this hidden one, I'm going to try and just get to it with a spanner to avoid having to take the strut brace off. Not done too much in terms of freeing up the strut. Let's try and lever this control arm out with a bit of force. There we go, that's out. Brilliant. So now the only thing is getting the hub off the strut. So I'm just wedging my lever bar into the gap there, which hopefully spreads the hub out away from the strut. Hopefully means I can buff it down. It is coming. Right, let's lube up the bottom of it. A few minutes ago I praised BMW for the drop link and the nut on the back, but this bit is a silly design. What is wrong with just having 2 bolts like on the Vauxhalls? Absolutely nothing. What do you know? What way around this goes back on? I try and leave a mark in line with this little sticky outy bit, and in the absence of any other marks I'll know that that mark I've just made needs to line up with that sticky outy bit. Forward planning. It's coming, but I wish it was coming quicker. Oh, here we go, here we go. Wow, check out that bad boy. Watch the wheel speed sensor wire. I've only just replaced that, I don't want to do that again. Let's get it out of that little bracket. There we go. Nicely done. I've just noticed though, you got these little knobbles here which need to line up with the gap in the hub. So that is what forces the hub to be in the right place against the strut. So my line was unnecessary. Back to the top. If we finish undoing these 13 mils, the strut will just fall away. Whoa! There it is. Here's the strut tower then. And in here is the cap. Just take this paper thing off. Don't really know what the purpose of that is. Might be squeaking or something. Squeak prevention. And this plate comes off as well. Right, there's the cap. And underneath should be a 21mm nut. So the nut is holding the spring in place. If we undo the nut as it is, then the top bit will fire off that way. So we put a spring clamp on it, which will stop that happening. And then gun it off. Is it moving? Not sure. Let's get some more air power to the gun. Moving. Just wondering if releasing the pressure off the clamps puts more pressure on the bolt to help undo the nut, because it's possible that the inners of the strut are just spinning around, which is what's happening because I can feel it on the chrome bit of the shock there. Right, the clamps are off. I've tried to play it safe. It is coming, but it's very slow. Really, I need a tool where I can put my socket on and then I can put an Allen key through the middle, but I don't have that because that Allen key would secure the shock, stop it spinning. Nearly there now. That is why you use the clamps. Do as I say, not as I do. The aftermath of the explosion. So now I need to work out how the shock pieces together. So I think go like that. Don't know where that bit goes. Well, it doesn't go on top. So either goes there or there. I reckon it goes there. The rest of it's pretty straightforward. Shock through dust cover and the rubber stopper through the spring. But one of these springs, they're all tangled up. There we go. We've got a kind of narrower end of the spring and a wider end, and you can see on the old spring it's the same. So the narrower end will go on like that, and you see in the shock there's a kind of stopper there which lines up with the end of the spring like so. Okay, so we'll definitely need the clamps now, otherwise I've got no chance of putting this back together. With the spring clamps on, I am able to push the top mounts down enough that I can see the thread, which should be enough thread to get the nut started, and I can wind it up the gun. I've waxed a load of grease in there because there's a ball bearing in there where the ball bearings are exposed, so just put enough grease to seal it from air and moisture, which will prevent them getting rusty and failing in the future. There we go. Now it went back on a hell of a lot easier than it did getting it off, so now I can get the clamps off and start getting the strut fitted back in the car. There it is, strut back in place with the new Eibach spring. Next I'm going to get the hub back onto there, then I can put the brake colour back on and start doing up these control arms. The car will of course need tracking once this is all done, not just because of the disturbance of these control arms, but lowering the car is going to change the geometry of the wheel, whether that's camber or the toe or the caster. So it's best that once we're done we will get it to a wheel alignment place so they can do their thing and say, oh, I don't get uneven tyre wear, meaning I have to change the tyres earlier than I would have otherwise needed to. Again, don't be like me, so I've done up the bolt that secures the hub to the strut, but I forgot to put that bracket through the bolt. So off we go again. Quick check-in, we're getting there. We've done the rear control arm bolt. We've got the front one to do, and the track would end, and then put the wheel back on, that's it. For this side anyway. When you do up suspension components like the control arms, you're supposed to do them up whilst the car is under load. When the car is on the floor, this hub is going to be pushed up into the wheel arch, and that means the angle of the control arms is going to go from that where it is now to that. So if I do this bolt up down here whilst it's at that angle, when the car's under load, the bush where the bolt goes through over here is going to be fighting against the tightness of that bolt that wants it to be in that position. So potentially it's going to wear the bush quicker. I need to undo the rear control arm again, get the jack under the hub here, push it up a bit, and then I can tighten it up again. And that's it, that is how you fit a lowering spring to the front of your E90. Except for my technique, getting the old spring off the strut. That's pretty much a how-to. Just need to take the jack away, get the wheel on, and then it's onto the other side, which I will time warp through because we've just done this in detail. You do not need to hear me talk through that again. After I've done the other side, we'll have a sneak peek at what the car is starting to look like now it's been lowered, and with the wheel spacers that we did in the last video on the E90. But we'll save a proper look at how the car looks overall until it's all done and we can get it outside. It also needs a good clean. I nearly forgot as well, I need to do these top mounts up. I've just made a big mistake. So you'll notice at the top mount there's a hole there and there's nothing sticking through it, whereas on the other side there's a little nipple sticking through. So I've put the strap back up in the wrong place. Another learn from me moment. I'm so glad to be here to make the mistakes again so you don't have to. Hopefully I can just undo these nuts and spin it around maybe. So one way to find out. If I put a clickbaity title on this video such as, oh, I made a big mistake, you won't believe it, come and watch my video. This is the mistake. You can see the nipple right there, and it needs to spin round and go in that hole. The strut has fallen down enough that it would turn. It just depends on if I can get a good grip on it to make that happen. I'm not sure if this is going to work, but I'm wondering if I get the strut brace out of the way and get my 21mm socket back onto the nuts that I struggle so much to undo under that dust cap, whether that might turn the whole thing. There's only one way to find out. It's working. There we go. More, maybe. I'm having an absolute mare here. I don't know if it was just twisting the strap back into the right place at the top, or if I did this in the first place, but this spring is not seated right. You can see that is where the end of the spring is supposed to sit, and it is there. And that is not something I can just unwind. Oh, and you can see at the top, so I've got messed up, and it is just pushing out this rubber. This is bad news. I'm just going to have to pull it out and start again. I think actually this is worthy of I made a mistake title. And we're back here again, so you can see what is going on here. That is no good. And that is where the bottom of the spring ends. It should end. Is it there? Yeah, it's just there, isn't it, actually? It's just about gonna do. Just about. Right, back off of that nut. That is how you are supposed to take the spring apart. Now you can reseat this. So that is where the bottom of the spring goes. We are going back on again. Hopefully in the right place this time. Finally, that's the driver's side done. Let's move the car over so I've got some space to work on this side and get the passenger side front spring finished. I interrupt this side because I'm having big problems again. The trackward end has got stuck, and what is good about it is that it has a T40 on the top of the thread there, but I've been using that for quite a while, holding the T40 of my ratchet whilst I get a spanner on the nut to try and undo it. But as often is the way these things go, the T40 is rounded, so I can no longer use it. I've got the jack on it to try and put a load of pressure on the bottom of the joint to try and force the thread to not move, but that's not working. So my next try is the blowtorch to heat it up. Hopefully the metal expands and the thing can come off, but I'm not too optimistic and I might need to drill it off. Seems to have an actual fire. So now my plan is to wind the nut back in, which I can do because the T40 rounded off with me trying to undo the nut. So there is still enough T40 there on the thread for me to get a grip with my ratchet and wind the nut back in. The idea being that once the nut has been up and down, I can give all the thread visible a good spray with grease and lubricant, and hopefully then once it's down the bottom with the gun it might just whiz off. Okay, so the nut is wound right down again, and that looks like that might be the problem. So as the nut has been wound down, there is this plastic from the nut which has somehow been left behind. So what do I do with that? I don't know. Can you guess what I've decided to do with it? Yes, it melts. Let's get the gun on it, see what happens. It's off. Yes! I guess the plastic is just similar to Loctite that you can put on nuts and bolts to just add like a little bit of extra tightness, like a glue, but in this case it has scuppered me. But it's all good, we're off and we can carry on with the job. Back to the time warp. Another interruption on the time warp because I've realised I've made yet another mistake on the first side that I did. So you see now I've put this back together, and you remember the nipple issue that I had to take the strut out on the driver's side after putting it in the first time in order to move that nipple, but see how freely this moves? The other side didn't do that, did it? And that is because I put the strut back the wrong way. So I have to finish doing this side and then I've got to take the driver's side out for a third time. If only I'd watched my video first. Passenger side done, but as I mentioned, I've got to go now back to the driver's side and take that out for a third time. I won't bother time warping through that, but we will skip straight to me rectifying the issue. And here is the driver's side shock off again, and you can see that this top bit just does not spin in the same way that the passenger side did, because you can see when I'm spinning it, I'm spinning the whole strut. Something else interesting though, doing the driver's side again, given the grief that I had with the track rod end nut on the passenger side, I thought I'd have a look and see where that plastic was when I got the driver's side off. I just can't see any, so I have no idea where that came from. Anyway, can't worry about that now, it is what it is, and it's back on and done up, so move on. Okay, so we take this apart again, and here is the fending piece. So here's the clip of me earlier, only thinking about what order the pieces went in, not thinking at all about what way up they go. I reckon it goes there. And here's the clip of me doing the other side, putting it in the right way. And this is me now turning it around to go the right way on this side. To show you up close, one side of this disc is kind of dome shaped, being this side, just in case you can't tell. And the idea is that on the top mount here, which goes that way in, there's a bearing in the middle, so the top of the dome connects with the bearing, which means it's only touching the bearing and therefore can spin freely like that. I'll waz this back together and then show you. There we go, that is what it was meant to do all along. Now when this goes back in, we should actually be done on the front. And subject to road test revealing any unfortunate knocks from anything that I might have forgotten to do up, the front is done. So the back, I'm not expecting to take anywhere near as long as that. I'm not going to waste any more time, let's go on that. Here's why I expect this to be a much easier job. You remember we replaced this shock before, see the video in the top right hand corner for that, and if you've watched that video you'll know that at the bottom of the shock there is a mount and there are 2 bolts either side of it, which you can undo from the bottom, an E12 bolt. So those have to come off to disconnect the shock from this rear arm, and then it is simply a case of finding the bolt that connects this rear arm to the hub, which is down there, 21mm, and get a jack under there, because once you undo that, the pressure of the spring is going to push that arm down, and then release the jack to gently lower the arm. The idea being you can then just take the spring out. Now we also did a rear spring on the E46 M3 not so long ago, and on that video I broke the rear drop link. In doing so, as I pushed the rear arm down, the drop link was attached to the rear arm and it snapped. This has a rear drop link, but unlike the E46, it is attached to the hub rather than the lower arm. Therefore, when I drop the lower arm down, it is not going to impact that drop link, so not something I need to worry about. Literally just 2 things then. Disconnect the shock from the arm and disconnect the arm from the hub. Sounds easy? Will it be? We'll see. You'll notice where I put the axle stand under the car, that is just under where the lower arm connects to the rear subframe. Hopefully, as the lower arm drops down, the axle stand isn't in the way. We'll have to see on that one. Jack. The axle stand is in the way as I feared, so I'm going to have to move the axle stand, but I'm not far away from being able to get the spring out. Oh, I don't have to move the axle stand. Excellent. So now we've got the spring out, we can compare the new spring with the standard spring and we can see it is that much lower already. Let's just take this rubber mount off. It's about 1 inch shorter, and that doesn't mean that the car is going to be 1 inch lower because these might be stiffer. So when this compresses, it will drop a lot more than this will when this compresses. So the compress difference will not be as much as what we're seeing here, but we will do a comparison once this is fitted. Let's get this rubber mount on top of here. I'm guessing that the Eibach writing on the spring is an indicator of what way up it goes. We'll soon find out if this rubber mount doesn't fit. Just going to put a bit of grease on the mount, which is just to prevent squeaking if anything else. Okay, nice satisfying popping sound as that pops into place. And then on top of the lower arm there where the spring sits, there's another rubber mount, so I'll just put a bit of grease on that as well. And then because the new spring is shorter than the one that came out, this should in theory be easier to get in than getting the old one out was. Spring is roughly in position now. You can see the rubber there needs to be pushed up into that little kind of cup holder there, and underneath it's not quite sinking in position yet because the lower arm needs to be pushed up. Next then we need to get the jack on it and start jacking this arm back so these holes meet the hole of the hub, and also guiding the shock back into position. Just pushing the bottom of the shock so that the holes line up before I push the arm up anymore, which will make the shock held more tightly in place and make it harder to manoeuvre. So now is the time to get these bolts started by hand, and then I can continue to go up to try and line these holes up. In jacking the arm up here, it's just not aligning right with the hub. You can see the hole in the hub there is sort of resting on top of the arm, whereas on the other side there seems to be a bit more of a gap. Try and get some leverage in there to push back like that. There we go. That felt like a good movement. Just continue jacking up. Just not quite lined up on this side, but so close. I'll just play the jack a bit more and I'll get it home. We're in. Finally. As with the fronts, when we do up these kind of bolts, we want the suspension under load, so it's right to have the jack on it still. One rear lowering spring fitted to the E90. That is 3 out of 4 springs now done. But before I move on to the passenger side rear, I've actually noticed when I was fitting the wheel spacers the other day, that the brake pads are very low. So whilst I've got the wheels off, I've ordered myself some new brake pads and I'm gonna fit those now. A while back we did rear discs and pads on the E46 M3, and these are going to be very similar, although we're only actually doing the pads, so a lot more straightforward than doing the whole disc, because inside here is the handbrake, but we're not touching that. So we've got 30mm bolt on the end there, and whilst you're undoing that, you're going to want a 15mm spanner just to hold this bit of the caliper carrier bolt to unwind the 13mm bolt out of there. Once you've done that, it's going to be a case of prizing the caliper off. I'm expecting it to be a wind back piston, as it was with the E46 as well. Let's get it off and find out. So there is my brake pad sensor. You can see it was starting to wear on the disc because there is a slight lip on the disc. I don't feel it's enough of a lip to warrant changing the discs at this point. I have taken a chip out of the plastic there. Hopefully it will still work, because the idea of these sensors is that when that plastic is worn through and the disc touches the metal, that completes the circuit, which puts the light on the dash. Oh, that was so close. You can see the metal actually through the plastic. That was so close to the light coming on. Anyway, hopefully that still works as a sensor, because I don't have a new one. And in terms of the caliper, it is actually not a wind back job. I'm just going to rewatch my E46 video and just if I'm remembering it wrong. To put the new pads on now, we need to push this piston all the way back in, and to do that we use these big grips. And yeah, having watched that, the E46 was a pushback one like this is. So as with the E46 then, we just squeeze the piston back in. Nice and easy. Get the pads out, give all this a good clean. Get your new pads, whack some grease on them. And then I'm going to put the caliper on before we do the brake sensor, which just slots into that groove like that. Just whack it in. Brake pad's done, spring done. Get the wheel on. Unless I have any issues on the passenger side, like I did when I did the front shocks and that tie rod end nut, I'm just going to skip to the passenger rear being done now. And it is done. And not only have I done the passenger side, but I've also had the car out and given it a bit of a clean. Well, quite a lot of a clean actually, because it was filthy. But what I haven't done is properly got it out of the driveway to see what it really looks like. And of course you'll be wanting to see that too. So let's get the car out and take it somewhere we can have a good look. But on the way we need to get the four-wheel alignment done. Otherwise I can't really drive this car any distance because I'll be worried of tyre wear. So I'll see you at the four-wheel alignment place. And I'm here at Pro Tyre and the car is inside. And it's all done. Let's get this thing to location where we can see what it looks like, and we'll talk about how much it's cost to do this. On the way, let's see how this thing handles. I am so very happy with this. It drives like a totally different car. Just the view from out of the windscreen, just feeling that bit lower to the road makes such a massive difference. Not that I'm driving a race car, but I no longer feel like I'm driving a boat. That was what I was going for the driving experience, but it was also about the looks. I shall now pass over to Dave from the past, who will remind us what the car looked like before, so we've got a reference when comparing it to what it looks like now. Thanks, present Dave. I'm here to remind you how the car looked before we did the lowering, so we can do a proper comparison. Check out how much room there is in here back in the past. Even more at the front. Hopefully that's a good reminder for you, present Dave. Now back to you to show him what it's like now. Thank you, past Dave. So here it is, the finished article. And you can see now the clearance is much, much less. And on the back, I can't actually get my hand in there. It's partly because I'm not quite on flat ground. There we go, just parked a little bit further down the road, but actually on the road. And that is how we are now sitting. I said we'd talk about how much it's cost to do the lowering and the wheel stance. The springs were £148, and then we needed the wheel alignment, which was £96. And for that, the car has been lowered 2.5 mil on one end and 3 mil on the other end. I'm not sure which way around it is. Looking at it, I would guess the rear end is 3 mil and the front is 2.5, because there still just seems a bit more gap at the top of that front wheel. So the question is now, what is next for the BMW E90? I'm very close now to getting to the point that I set out to get to almost a year ago, when I said that I wanted to make this car cool. I want to make this car cool. The first thing was fixing the dents, which we've done with the wrapping, and the second thing was sorting out the stance of the wheels, which we've done with the wheel spacers, and now the lowering. The only thing that I haven't done is sort out the wheels, which need a bit of care, don't they? Either a refurb or replacing, or my preference is to get some proper wheel cleaner and see how well I can get them to come up. I've also mentioned in previous videos about my desire to get a new car to replace the E46 M3, and I want something that's equally as special as that was. And in order to do that, I'm going to have to move the car on at some point. But we've spent so much time on this E90, and I think we've got it looking really good, and there's still lots of other things we could do to it. For example, I've talked about the chrome trims and perhaps de-chroming it. I could do lots of other little things like, you know, bumper splitters, steering wheel covers. There's quite a few cheap modifications I could still do to this car, but I'd be interested to know, what do you think I should do with it? Should I keep it, or do I move on and upgrade one of my cars? Anyway, I'm so glad I finally got to this point of having the car lowered and the wheel stance looking as I want it. I do think it looks wicked. So with that, I will catch you next time, and remember, let me know what I should do with this car.